Are you feeling burned out or unappreciated as a spouse or partner? Today, we're going to reveal how treating others as less than capable can backfire and how to build trust, respect, and fulfillment in your family. So stay tuned. Hey, parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's walk and talk. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy, where we teach you how to take your mental health, wellness, and life fulfillment to the next level. I'm your host, Kendra Nielsen, and today we're talking about a topic that hits home for so many of us, about a tricky relationship pitfall. What happens when we treat our spouses and our kids or anyone close to us as if they're incompetent? This is something that quietly drains our relationships, our energy, and even our self-respect. But before we jump into that, I want to remind you that for 1 month only, from December 5th, 2025 to January 5th, 2026, we have the biggest discount ever for coaching and for our 6 courses. So our personal growth course, our parenting course, and our marriage course, as well as our 3 business courses that will help you begin and start a thriving podcast and that online business. You can get that right now for 25% off for the first time ever, and probably the only time ever, with both that and coaching be 25% off, which is a huge savings. But we're only doing it as a team because it's the first holiday season ever that it's all available. And it is a big thank you, despite it being worth 10 times what we market as. So don't hesitate. It's such a simple thing to purchase. It's so easy. So get that accountability. You get that incremental breakdown of those weekly lessons, and you do it at your own pace. It is exactly what you need to get that extra help for creating and deepening your life fulfillment, especially as we're getting into that time of year. That's really difficult for a lot of people with seasonal affective disorder. After the holidays, it's that perfect time to jump into something where you deepen your fulfillment, whether it's through a podcast, hit an online business, or whether it's through those personal and family growth courses to deepen that fulfillment. So check that out on fulfillmenttherapy.org. And remember that gift code is GIFT25. So don't forget to access that while you still have a chance. Now let's jump into the episode. I want to share a story about a client that came to me a while ago that was completely exhausted and frustrated. She'd been carrying a mental load for her family for years. And one evening, she asked her husband to help her with laundry, and he accidentally put bleach in the colored clothes. I know, like a big deal, right? But when she asked him about it, he just shrugged and said, "I'm not good at this stuff." And so she took over, and obviously this time with a lot of resentment. But this wasn't the end of the story. And I'm going to share what happened in just a minute. But I first want to talk about what this is. So this is weaponized incompetence and its ripple effect. So you might be wondering what exactly this is. Not a lot of people know, but weaponized incompetence is when someone pretends to be incapable of a task to avoid that responsibility, and it leaves their partner or their family member to pick up that slack. Now, this is not always conscious, so don't jump to those conclusions. As a matter of fact, I think most times it's not. But sometimes it's a learned behavior as a way to dodge conflict or effort. I just had a client this morning that was talking about that in their relationship. And it is likely in this case unconscious, but he plays dumb a lot because he's so anxious and so afraid of conflict. And she recognized that, you know what, I think this is not conscious, but that he's doing it over and over again. When he does understand, he just gets crippled with that anxiety. So in families, it can look like a spouse who forgets how to do his chores or a child who always needs help with certain tasks until someone else just does it for them. For example, this could be that a husband that always messes up on the grocery shopping so that she stops asking him, or her son that can't make his own lunch. So she does it for him instead every morning. I know we've all heard stories like this. Maybe that teenager that just feels like he can't do anything so that he doesn't have to do anything. Well, weaponized incompetence can strain relationships, whether it's home or at work or in another sphere, even by breeding that frustration, resentment, and conflict. Now, I want to talk about how treating others as incompetent demotivates and disconnects us, because this is a part of it too. This is something I do see quite a bit more. So, when is it that you treat other people, especially your kid and spouse, as if they can't handle things? It chips away at their motivation and their self esteem when we do this. And maybe we notice ourselves doing it more in one scenario than another. But it's important to take an honest look at ourselves and think about times that we have done this. So, again, I want you right now to think about a time when you were treated as if you were incompetent. So, whether it was a parent or a friend or whoever it was, when they saw you as incompetent and lacking, you didn't even really want to try. You just feel like you can never win. So when children are constantly doubted or criticized, they start to believe that they can't succeed. And that often leads to self-fulfilling prophecies where they just stop trying. So instead of pointing that finger at others, I want you to look in the mirror and say, could any of this apply to me? Could this be something I might be doing? For example, have you ever been told by your spouse or maybe other people that you might be micromanaging your spouse or your kids or belittling them even? If this happens, maybe you're doing this in your relationships. Do you belittle your family members or micromanage them? And do they maybe feel like they need to withdraw or do less or become passive, like nothing they do is good enough? Or have you received any feedback? For example, one of my clients' daughters stopped trying to help with dinner because her mom always redid everything she did. And her husband quit doing dishes after being told he was doing it wrong so many times. Like maybe everybody's doing things. So if you feel frustrated and feel like everyone's doing things a bit wrong and your OCD is flaring up and you like things in a very particular way and nobody does it right, no matter how many times you tell them, you might be flirting with this too much. The way you view people as incompetent will likely come across in your words and in your actions, even without you directly saying it. Sam Keen said, "We come to love not by finding a perfect person, but by learning to see an imperfect person perfectly." Of course, we're imperfect and we have flaws, and we're not going to do all the things right, but we're all incompetent in different ways. We have to train ourselves to talk to each other in a productive way and see the good in each other instead of just the shadows. It's exhausting to be around somebody that only sees those shadows, and that is distracting. Now let's talk about this cycle: resentment, bitterness, and dysfunction. So when one person always takes over, it seems to build resentment on both sides. So one person feels overburdened and the other feels untrusted or even treated like an infant. And their spouse might be sending the message that says something like, "You're such a child," or "I feel like I have another kid." And maybe even they joke about it, and it can be very hurtful. Now, this cycle can be passed down through generations. Maybe you saw your mom or even your grandmother treating their spouse like everyone's incompetent. Maybe their children, maybe their spouse, and everyone's lacking and is just a general disappointment to other people. Now, if the spouse or if the child resists that grandmother or that mother, whoever it is that's doing it, it can lead to estrangement or distance and even that open conflict that really makes it difficult to connect to one another. And if they comply, they might lose respect for their partner or even their parent. And you risk losing respect for yourself too. Now, that can be a little confusing, so let me explain it with an example. One of my clients' teenagers stopped sharing anything personal because he felt like his parents always saw him as irresponsible no matter what he did. So that's just one simple example. Think of any time where you get feedback from somebody, or maybe you can see it in somebody else, where they can never measure up and they just stop trying. There's no motivation there to keep trying when they've been taught over and over again that no matter what, it's just not enough. And that belief that is there is you're just incompetent. And you can see how destructive that can become. The Joyce brothers said the best proof of love is trust. Do you show your family members that you trust them even when they have setbacks, even when they make mistakes? So if you're recognizing this might be you or your family, how do you break that pattern? How do you see other people as their best selves? Well, the antidote to that is to see other people as capable, even when they make mistakes, because we're all human. My friends, this is part of the human experience. This builds that trust, that competence, and that connection. Now, I understand that it's easier said than done, but when we recognize that that is our side of the street and it's not a reflection of reality necessarily, but of our own imperfections or our own shadows and our own generational patterns and struggles, and then that is where real change comes. When you have that self awareness, then you can make a plan and back it up with action to overcome this. You can focus on your side. You can practice seeing the good and you can point that out more. You can let go of control and allow others to try and to fail and to learn and normalize that because that fosters that growth and that mutual respect. You can also normalize it for yourself and recognize that it's unfair and unrealistic to assume that people are going to nail things every time or even do it the way that you want them to do it because you're different people. Likely, those things are not fair expectations. And maybe you can dial that back a bit. You can do some perspective taking. If the tables were turned and they were expecting those things of you to the same level, how often would you be able to do that? Is there someone in your life that you feel like you could never measure up to? And as you think about that person, remember what it feels like for yourself. That perspective taking will really help. I have another example of a client that started to let her husband handle more of the family budget, even when he made those small mistakes. And over time, he became more engaged and more confident with that experience. There's also the example I mentioned earlier about allowing your kids to make their own lunch, and they can take pride in their independence, even if it's something that they might not want to do initially. So how can you be the bigger person and change that family dynamic of feeling resentful and bitter and angry when you feel like people are incompetent? How can you treat them in a better way, a higher way, and become your best self and then inspire them to become their best selves without nagging them and treating them as less than? Being the bigger person means resisting that urge to step in or to criticize or redo someone else's work and instead offer them encouragement and the space to grow. Don't make it so hard that they feel like it's an impossible task and that perfectionism is too big. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, focus on the positive and notice and acknowledge their efforts and not just the results. This is really big for kids, for all of your loved ones to celebrate those small wins and progress along that way. I've been doing this a lot with my son, and we're really working on him with some emotional regulation because he loses his temper a lot. And for a while, we were really getting after him, and we noticed it didn't really help him change. So we started to focus on what he was doing well. And that, more than anything, along with physical touch, has really helped him get a better handle on his emotional regulation. He wanted to set goals. So we set goals with him that would help him. Like he wanted to do a goal chart and he wanted to have positive reinforcement. He wanted us to point out the good things. So we've been doing that. And it's remarkable how much has worked for him when nothing else has worked. So you can use language that empowers. Like, I appreciate you taking this on, or I really trust you with this. Thank you for your efforts and your help. Thank you for your contribution. I had one client that reframed her approach with her son and placed his efforts to clean his room, even when it was far from perfect. And he started to do it more often and even better over time. Now, I want to go back to that story that I started with my client and that laundry fiasco that honestly would have made me very irritated and angry, especially if a whole load of laundry was ruined. But instead of taking over, she calmly explained why this mattered to her. And then she stepped back. So over the next few weeks, her husband handled the laundry, even when the socks came out to peak potentially, and gradually started asking more questions and learning more and eventually taking more ownership. So their relationship did feel more like a partnership, and she felt lighter and more respected. She felt less alone. She felt less resentful. Now, that did not come overnight. So if you're practicing and you're like, it's not working, it does work. It does require communication and patience. And in this case, it required some counseling to work through some of those things, to help her see when she should back off, when she could have more realistic expectations, where she could highlight the good and celebrate those wins, where those patterns were. And the same goes for you too when you treat other people as incompetent. Like maybe there's more that needs to happen. Maybe you need a counselor. Just remember that when you treat others that way as incompetent, when you don't trust them, it drains motivation and that erodes trust. And that connection can really disappear for everyone involved. So if you don't want that resentment or that dysfunction in your home, it's really important to start seeing the best in other people and letting go of some of that control. Remember that letting go of some of that control builds that trust and that respect and that enthusiasm in your home. So if you want to thrive, challenge yourself to do some of these things that we talked about today. Change just starts with a few different things. That's encouraging them, empowering them, and celebrating the effort. As you give your family members greater respect and watch your tone and your nonverbals and treat them as more competent and capable, you and your family really will flourish. But it does begin with you. It's not about pointing fingers at other people, about holding up that mirror. Explore what you can do on your side of the street to improve your family fulfillment and that peace and that harmony in your home. All right, my friends, I hope this helps you. If you feel like this will help somebody you know and love, please share this episode on social media or through text or emails, whatever way you can get that message out there. And if you haven't already, please leave us a review. That helps us get seen and helps others want to deepen their mental health, wellness, and life fulfillment. Don't forget to check out our website, fulfillmenttherapy.org, for those courses and coaching with that gift code GIFT25. Remember, that's only going to be available for 1 month until January 5th. So check it now for 25% off of everything. This is the only time it will be there for only 30 days. All right, my friends, I'll see you back here every Monday and Thursday with a new episode. Until then. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.